Um, when Pops first moved in with us almost 6 years ago, he was hard of hearing, and he had hearing aids that he never wore. And so the TV was up loud. I'd have to yell at him, and I'd say, "Where are your hearing aids?" Ah, you know, you know him, ah, and or anyway, or I don't. He just wouldn't do it. And I thought, this man's a protector. And so I sat down with him once. I said, Dad, because I had fallen a few years before and had a tremendously, broke my pelvis in 4 places, shattered my wrist. I'd had a bad fall. And I said, Dad, I said, what if I fall and I'm in the other room and I'm yelling and you can't hear me? And he sat there and he thought a minute and he said, I never thought of that. From that day on, he wore his hearing aids. And from that day on, I thought, I want this man in my house. So he was always the protector, provider, excuse me, caregiver, and that's my quick story. Where'd Bob go? Anyone else? He disappeared. Okay, well, come. Let's just pass the mic around a bit.
Yeah, when right before we came here, we had gone through an incredibly hard time. Everything was affected. Our friendship circles, our pastor, our church, our work, everything was affected. Everything was pulled out from underneath us. And when we came to this church, we knew we wanted to come because Bob was here. But when we came, Pop said his welcome, but he also said, you found us. And I thought, yeah, I found you.
To read to you from Pops. Just got this straight from heaven today. No. Special delivery. Actually, 2-3 years ago, our church, I asked our church to write up some life goals under 5 categories. Remember that? Well, that fall we did that. And so we were supposed to think about how we were going to use our life for the stewardship of the gospel, the use of time, use of relationships, use of your body, and use of money, kind of those 5 categories. And so Dad, I had people writing on little 3x5 cards, but he said that he needed more space. So this is what he wrote about 3 years ago for life goals. Number 1, the gospel is good news, and by reading the Bible and other related books, it teaches me about faith, trust, love, heaven, and many other things, many other subjects, too many to mention here. Reading a little of these books daily is an effort and a promise I made to Jesus. And he did every day. 4 or 5 books, he'd be reading his Bible and these other Jesus Calling and some other ones. Dad really grew as a Christian here. I have to tell you, he really grew as a Christian. And you all were part of that. Your love, your encouragement, your prayers, we helped Dad get ready for heaven. Secondly, he said use of time. At age 90, time is valuable. Prior to going to abundant life, I hardly gave any of these 5 above subjects any consideration. I do now. So he's making sure he uses his time well. Number 3, use of relationships. This church, its ministry, its congregation, with its ongoing demonstration of faith, trust, and love, is something I sense, admire, and hope to be a part of forever. Isn't that beautiful? He found something here that he didn't find even in the Army. Can you believe? Even at the post office, he didn't find this kind of fellowship, and he loved it. Want to be a part of forever and help others. Okay, so that's number 4, use of the body. I try to keep healthy, both body and mind, within the limitations that both body and mind will allow. The book, the Bible, shows that diets and fast are a way of showing our faith and trust and love to God, like the Daniel fast that we've done every January. You probably remember that, 21-day fast. Now, the Go Church happens to do a Daniel fast, too. Isn't that interesting? Must be the same Bible. But I feel that doing these kinds of things should be done within the parameters of physical and mental health. Keep the faith, but also stay healthy. Use of money. I feel that with the cost of things today, we should only give what we can afford. And with that in mind, I believe that charity begins at home, especially in families with children. After all considerations, Jesus will love us, I'm sure. So Dad was very generous with his family. He gave very generously. That's all I can say. He didn't. It was not stingy. And then he says, "Thank you," and he says, "Pops, thank you, and thank you, thank this church." And that's his. Those are his 5 goals for 3 years ago. Amen. And then lastly, I just wanted to read you a couple of lines from his Bronze Star. These sheets, this is his nomination to get a Bronze Star, and there's another one on the table back there from the Congressional Record of 1998, where Congressman Wolf outlines some of the highlights of Dad's life. There are copies on the table if you want it. But anyhow, he's in Korea, and he's serving with in Happy Valley is the name of the camp. There it is. Happy Valley, the 505 Military Intel Platoon. And so there's Dad, and he was a first sergeant. And that man there, his family was killed by the communists in China, and then he became a part of our forces. They were interrogating Chinese prisoners. He's got a little goldfish in there, Fluffy. And they served with Australians, and they gave him their hat. Yeah, here he is. One of the few non-smiling pictures. So Dad was the first sergeant, which means he's in charge of all the enlisted men to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do, and have what they need. Being a first sergeant, as I think Bud Abbott told me, is kind of like being a mother and father of the company. It's a lot of details. You have to know the men very well, and just about everything that they do runs through your hands. So here's what his captain, Sidney Horn, neither of you guys knew Sidney, I guess. He was the commanding officer of the 505. He said he was with a minimum of supervision, or let's start with that. Throughout this period over there in Korea, Sergeant Fox's character of service was excellent. In his position as first sergeant, he performed his duties in an outstanding manner. With a minimum of supervision, Sergeant Fox was instrumental in efficiently organizing his unit's correspondence and administrative files and records. What he didn't say is that Sergeant Fox, yeah, well, can you listen to this, or you haven't seen these before? Yeah. Yeah, well, they've seen them, I think. What the captain didn't say is that Sergeant Fox finagled a hot shower system up there. This is on the 38th parallel where it snows in the wintertime, and there were no hot showers. And so we actually had a relative from Scotland who was serving in the Air Force down in Seoul, and Dad took a Jeep down there and made a deal with him and said, I need a big generator to make hot water so our guys can have showers. And my relative borrowed a large generator kind of on the sly, and they trucked it on up to the 38th parallel. And for miles around, soldiers would come to get these showers because there were no hot showers up there. And it was one of the largest generators they had in Korea. It was like the size of a small truck. And so he was famous for that and for some other things like that. So he supervised the interrogation of prisoners of war and all the dissemination of interrogative reports. Sergeant Fox, through his constant display of aggressiveness, initiative, ability, and devotion to duty, provided the necessary leadership in this difficult period. Down at the bottom here it says, his soldierly appearance and adherence to the traditions of the service, coupled with his cheerful manner in which he displayed, have been a constant source of inspiration to all he came in contact with. So that was his Bronze Star recommendation. I just thought I'd share that. Anyone else? Yes, here's Beth.
he definitely was generous. So my kids, I guess I don't know if I need to move or something. My kids loved doing chores for Pops. It all started one day. His TV wasn't working, and Ryan went over, my second son went over, and spent about 2 minutes, found something, plugged it in, and he was handed a $50 bill. Sweet. Now, I went over another day and worked for an hour and got nothing, but I'm just saying. And then the girls went and cleaned his apartment, and of course it's like, here's a couple $100 bills, one for each of you. So I would try to get them to do chores around my house. Well, I'll do it for $50. I'll do it for $100. So Pops and I had to have a conversation about the work ethic and value of $1. I said, I'm glad you're generous. You can be generous other times, but if they're going to work for you, pay them minimum wage. Can you do that for me, Pops? So he did. He honored that, and he would pay them minimum wage for the chores that they would do around the house for him. And then, of course, he'd bless them. Another time, he wanted to bring donuts. If you know Pops, he loves donuts. And he said, can I bring donuts to your kids? I'm like, sure. I'm thinking he's going to bring a box of donuts. I come home, and on my counter is about $60 to $100 worth of donuts and pies and cream pies and this and that, and it's sugar, 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 sugar. My kids were in heaven. And I said, Pops, thank you so much, but that was way too much. He's like, no, it's good for them, Oatmeal cream pies, it's oatmeal, it's healthy, And so I said, we really love fruit. And so if you knew my Pops, he wanted to get to know who you were. He'd always ask me, what was her name again? And he'd repeat it over and over again. And what is she like? And where is she from? And so he asked each of my kids, what's your favorite fruit? And so about, I don't know, 4 to 6 times a year, maybe every other month or so, I'd come home and there'd be bushels of bananas and kiwis for Wendy and apples and clementines and orange. He wanted to make sure each kid had their favorite fruit. So yes, very, very generous. And he always wanted to pay for meals. We already talked about that. But when we did family meals, Mom would make some food, I would make food, Michelle might make food, and Kelly might make food or whatever. And he would say, and Abby, and he'd say, let me know. I'm going to pay for that. I'm going to square up with you. You add it up. You tell me what it is. So initially, I'd add up it was $23.16, whatever. Pops, $23.16. Here's a 50. Okay, no, Pops, that's too much. I'll buy some more bread. And so I got to the point where I didn't even add things up because he would just always kind of hand you a 50, And then like a half hour later, he'd be like, I need to square up with you and try to hand me another 50. I'm like, no, Pops, you already did. He's like, I did? Are you sure? Half hour later, he'd try to give me another 50. Pops, you already squared up with me. I said, Pops, I could take you to the bank. And I said, you wouldn't do that. I said, no, because you raised your son right and your son raised me right, but very generous, very, very generous. Waitresses were always like, looking at the tip going, oh, no, sir, looking at us like your grandpa doesn't know what he just did. And we're like, no, he does. He knows. We know it. That was his love language. Anybody else want to share? Ryan.
Hi, my name's Ryan. So we knew Pops when he started coming, when he moved here with Bob. I helped Bob out with some different things around the house, and so whenever I'd go over there, I would get to see him. I would hang out in the man cave with Pops and got to spend a little time with him. And it was funny, you mentioned the oatmeal cream pies. He always had stacks of oatmeal cream pies, and he said, when I would do my walk, when he would walk 13 miles on his mail route, he said he survived off of them. He said that's what he would eat, and I was like, that you ate those, like a box a day? And he's like, yeah. And so I thought that was hilarious. But my daughter, Sarah Joy, she's like the cutest little thing. She's 9, this pretty little blonde girl. And so when Pops used to sit right back there, and whenever we would come, he would be like, Sarah Joy! And he would just smile, and because she would be all cute and dance and stuff. And so we always brought us joy. We always loved to come and see him and talk to him. And so she would come, sit next to him. But, we definitely appreciated our time with him. So, Oh yeah, so because he would stand by the front and he would say, "Welcome to abundant life," and I can't do it. And Sarah Joy would like mimic him do it too, and she would stand out there like, "Welcome to abundant life," and so.
Welcome to abundant life.
No. Yeah. How much do you remember him?
90%.
That's pretty good. That's better than some of us. Some days we're only in the 80s. All right. Anyone else?
He was also forever offering my boys a beer. Have a beer. No pops, they can't. Tell people, then make them into a
He offered everybody a beer, including the hospice lady, and she said, "No, I'd rather keep my job."
One day, Bob and Pop Fox were out shopping, and Pop saw this shirt that I'm wearing, and he says, "That Kevin really liked that shirt with the flags and the ships on it." Next thing you know, I got one. So I'm wearing my shirt in his honor today, and I want to salute his patriotic bent. I'd sit there in his big chair there, and we'd watch the news, and he would just get so hot about some of these issues, and I'd get so hot about them too. And I'd say, Pop, was it like that in the old days? He says, "No, we do it this way in the old days." And he loves Donald Trump. And I said, "You're singing my song." Me and him. So I got him a Trump hat, and he wore that thing proudly. And I'd say to him, "Now, Pop, this has no comparison to your World War II hat. Just when you get tired of your World War II hat, put on the Trump hat." And he says, "I'll do that, Kevin." So the best story I love is about Pop was when it's 1945, and he walks into Berlin, and he's there when the Germany surrendered. And that just touched my heart, that something so significant as a surrender of Germany, he was in country for that event. And no wonder everybody loves his patriotism. I mean, that is, to know that you were with somebody who experienced that was quite an honor. There's his hat. And I said, "Pop, don't ever lose that hat. If you lose it, get another one. That's your number one hat. Wear it proudly."
Yeah, I wanted to read also from Lauren Bixler. My daughter Kelly, I read from her in Kentucky, wishes she could be here too. So she posted a picture of Pops with his, infamous, giving her high sign. But anyway, she said, "Hey, Pops, man, I can't imagine what you're seeing right now. I know you're in such an amazing place right now, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for everything you've done for my family. Thank you for telling the coolest stories about your life. Thank you for explaining to me and Wendy why it was not a good idea to wear green socks in the military." Bud, explain that one to me, okay? Why is it not a good idea to wear green socks in the military? Oh, you don't remember that? Okay, he explained it to you. Thank you for being so generous, funny, kind, and loving to me and my family. Thank you for showing me what it means to be a hard worker through your incredible stories. I mean, they heard stories. To be a hard worker, thank you for risking your life to save a young boy from being executed when you were in World War II. Thank you for going against direct orders and feeding an entire town of starving people in Germany in the war. Thank you for giving the best advice and never ceasing to make me smile. You truly were the best man I've ever known. Said, "I love this first sergeant." Peace out, Pops.
From Lauren. What has it been now? I guess 3 weeks? 2 weeks. I think it's been 3. Anyways. Pop became kind of a shut-in the last few weeks of his life. And we just had to get over there and see him. So we arranged to go over, and it just so happened that it was Thursday night football. And it just so happened that it was the Philadelphia Eagles, which is his team, and the Green Bay Packers, which is our team, playing each other. So it's the first time I'd seen him in about 2 weeks since he decided or had to not come to church anymore and things like that. So he was pretty, he had lost his voice by that point. But he was ready to just watch that game with us. And so Sarah, before we went over there, she knew he couldn't speak. And so she made this pennant, got online and got the Eagles logo. And what was on the other end, the other side?
Well, maybe, let's see.
What was it? Kick some Packers' butt or something?
Did say that, but that's it did.
So she,
Kick some Packers butt.
yeah. So she makes this pennant
Now he can wave it.
and hooked and tapes it to a chopstick, I think it was, right?
very
A little dowel.
Like a doll, yeah.
Brings it over there, and so he's sitting in his chair. We're watching the game, and every time there was a good Philadelphia play, he'd go.
And I go.
He'd wave that.
Packers fan,
He'd
but I
wave
told
that
him to be a
pennant,
cheerleader.
and it was about all he could do. Smile on his face, and he'd try and say something, but it just was unintelligible. So the Packers led the whole daggone game, right? Lose in the end. And so he was just ecstatic about that. This incidentally was 48 hours later he had passed away. Okay. So the crowd thinned out in the room. It was me and Pop at the end of the game. So it's like 12, midnight. And I got up, and I just knew it was going to be the last time I'd ever see him. And we shook hands, but we just knew. He gave me a look I can't even explain how it looked, but it was just like, thanks for being my friend. And I just told him, I said, I love you so much, and you've just meant so much to us. And he was so kind to us. He endowed us with, like Lori says, just over and above, overboard with stuff, favor. And so, yeah, it was just a really sweet evening. And I really think it was the last fun he had before he left this earth. Next day, he had to go to the doctor and do this and that and the other thing. And so it was sweet. I'm so thankful that I had that opportunity. We had that opportunity to say goodbye. He was one in a million. One in a million. Anybody else?
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not feeling so well, so I'm just gonna sit. But and I'm not gonna be able to get through this very far without crying. So the past 2-3 years, every time Mom and Dad would go out of town, I'd have the joy and privilege of getting to take care of Pops. And for some reason, a couple of years ago, I started to just talk to him and record things that he would say. So I have probably a good couple hours worth of just him talking about his old stories and war stories and, just life stories. And I don't know, his stories, I always go and I just brag on him. I mean, to me, Pops was like my hero, and he was the coolest person you'd ever meet because his stories were just so over the top, and never got sick a day in his life except I think he got struck by lightning or something once. Just really crazy. But I mean, I've been sitting here trying to think of one story I could even say, but I can't, except just the fact that he was just, again, like what everyone says, is so wonderful and so generous and just loved everybody and so intelligent and intuitive in how he knew people and knew what was going on in a way that was really surprising because he used to say that he wasn't very smart. And he had this story where he which is crazy because the man literally taught himself how to build his own house. I mean, he took like a 500 square foot house and turned it into over five. Oh, actually, he told me it was like over 5,000 square feet. Okay, that was maybe his own exaggeration, but like dug the basement by himself and like, yeah. You know, but he told me that I guess one of his higher ups in the military, I'm terrible with that, you know, taught him to memorize, I guess, the salute in the Army, and he felt like for some reason and he always remembered it, that was his claim to his intelligence. And I think right before he died, he could still say exactly what it was, and you know, and it was long, and he would repeat it. And I think we did that for him on his last birthday, and he teared up, and because it meant so much to him. But I just miss him a lot. And just so thankful for him. So I don't know, miss you, Pops.
I'm still talking. I'm sorry. I was, 6 years with this man. For everyone, what he said repeatedly to me, because I would see him give money here and give money there and take care of the kids and give, and he would always say, you got to take care of family. And that was it. That was one of his mainstays, his foundation of him is you got to take care of family. And of course, we're a bigger family, and he took care of a lot of people here too. Yep. So that $100 bill in his pocket, I think, found their way into many people's pockets. So it's true. Okay, Asa, I'm sorry, Asa, but I got to read this. Okay, can I read this that you said to me about Pops? Okay, Thursday after Pops had died on that Saturday, I get a text message. This is Asa. I go, hi, Asa. And he says, are you doing good? And I thought he was talking my foot. I said, I'm feeling better tonight. How are you? And he says, no, are you being good with Pops not in the house? And he says, not being, but doing. Are you doing good with Pops not in the house? I said, I miss him. I'm in his room right now looking at this message. I'm looking at some of his stuff. And then Asa tells me, you should pray that his room about him. I thought, I said, what should I pray? And he says, you can pray in your bed about how he's doing. He says, I love you, good night. I'm glad he's in heaven, and Jesus has peace, and with God. I hope Pops is in heaven with God. I know he's in heaven, and I'll say good night to him when I go to bed. You wrote all that. I said, I'm glad Pops is in heaven too, and I'm sure he's very happy. I said good night to him too when I went into his room a few minutes ago. Asa says, I love God. And I say, Pops loves you very much, Asa. And Asa says back to me, he says, he loves you too. He still loves you. And he said, he will always love you. I know that. And I said, I always know that too. God loves our whole family very much. And then Asa says something very, very true. I am Pop's best friend. And I said, whenever I showed Pops a picture of you, he would say, that's my boy. And he says, I love you, Pops. I love Pops. Bye, Grandma Fox. So that was his first text, and it was, so I've screenshot the whole thing. It's precious. But Asa, you really, Asa, you made me so happy. It made me so happy to know you were talking to Pops too, and know he's in heaven, and that he loved all of you grandkids. He loved you kids so much. Always talked about you and loved you and wanted to hear stories and see pictures of you on his phone. I think this jacket is one that he always wanted to clothe Jacob. He wanted to clothe. Because Jacob was big, and so Pop's big man, and so he's still got some clothes there he wants you to come look at. So
I have to say, too, when Jacob was born, he had these hands and these feet I didn't know where they came from. Because I have long, skinny fingers. Jeremy has long, skinny fingers. I've got skinny feet. Jacob came out with these man hands and these thick feet. Like at 3 months, he had to wear 12-month size, shoes and socks because they were thick this way and this way. And I remember years later when Pops came to live with Mom and Dad, I'm looking at his hands and I'm like, oh, it's like, Jacob has your hands. He's like, Irish boxing hands. And then he starts talking about his shoes, how he has a hard time with shoes because his feet are thick like this way and they're wide this way. And I'm like, that is where he gets it from, It's, none of my other kids, all of us have these skinnies, but he had He's got Pops's Irish boxing hands and big feet.
I just was thinking, I love that Bob went and got to spend a little time one-on-one with Pops after he passed, and the Lord spoke to him, and that scripture came to his mind for his comfort. And Bob asked us today what scripture would come to mind. I think you said if Pops were your father, and you were there, and everyone came up with what Bob said, which was so wonderful. And then Bob said to be absent from the body is to be in the presence of the Lord. Praise God. And along those lines, I think if I had had the chance, I would have sat down next to Pops and I would have said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they see God." And Pops, you made it. My friend, you made it. Because he was one of the purest men that I've ever known. And he, I have to echo what Lauren said. In fact, I only have one teeny tiny regret. I tried to live every day, especially as he got sicker, communicating with him and letting him know how much he meant to us and how special he was. But the last note I sent, it was probably the best card I found, and in there I did say what Lauren said. I said, "Pops, you're the finest man I believe I've ever known." And he didn't get that one, but I know that he'll get it in heaven, and that he was one of the finest. He was the finest man I think I've ever known. Just so wonderfully loving and precious. And I'm happy that he's so happy.
Norm, and then, sorry, he's been sitting there waiting. I've been watching you. And then Rick.
Believe it or not, I'm a little bit at a loss for words. Came here to Abundant Life in 2016 via my brother from another mother, Marshall. When I got here, I took a place in the back right there beside Pops, and I just felt like I belonged in the church for many, many reasons, but he was one of the big reasons why. My dad, he died in 2013 at the age of 87. He was 6 months older than Pops. So he was a ship fitter in the United States Navy in World War II. He was on the USS Chandeleur, which was in Mobile Bay during the surrender, the Japanese surrender. He watched it from the big eyes. So I'm pretty convinced my dad had something to do with me meeting Pops. I believe he's like, "Okay, son." He did not son. "Okay, boy." He called me his boy. He said, "I have a man you need to meet. And I'm going to put you as this guy because he's kind of like me." So meeting Pops made me feel like that I had a little bit of piece of my dad still here with me physically on this earth. And Pops is one of the most wonderful men I've ever met. And I know he was with me whenever my fiance lost her son almost 2 years ago. And last year when her other son got severely injured, Pops was there. This whole church was there. I've never been associated with a more loving church than this one. And when I moved back to West Virginia, I am going to miss this church more than you'll ever know. And, well, it's a little too late for that now. I've already moved. I think my fiance might have something to say about that. But, no, this is about Pops. And I just love him dearly. And that welcome to abundant life and that death-defying handshake was amazing. And I can guarantee you when Pops ascended into heaven, my dad was there. And he probably said something to him like, "You know my boy." I guarantee it. And they have a place up there with my mom and my dad and Josh, that's my fiance's son. They've all probably hung out together and talked some. So for the last thing I want to say is this, is I'm a retired Navy senior chief. So with Pop's dedicated service to our country, all I got to say is this is Senior Chief Norman Blackwell. I salute you, Pops Fox.
Well, just as Beth talked about the $100 bill that's always in his pocket, right before I would leave on a mission trip, he would secretly pass that $100 bill to me and say, "Here, this is for you." And it happened every time, and including this time, end of August, he slipped me that $100 bill for this trip I'm about to take on Tuesday. I just want to thank God and thank Pops for that never-ending $100 bill.
When you were cleaning out all his stuff, did you come across the printing press?
Yeah, yeah, really. Let's see. Introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Ava Fox. I'm David Fox's oldest kid. And I'm learning a lot more about Pops now that he's gone than I've ever learned about him before, and really realizing how like important he was to all these people. Like y'all were saying that how he was just like a good man, like he was tough, but he was also like so gentle, like I don't even know, but like he was like strong and tough and like big scary old war guy, but he wasn't. He was like gentle, and he always wanted to help people, and I don't really know. That's pretty much all I had to say.
Yeah.
Very true.
I didn't have anything planned. I couldn't pick out one thing that I appreciate about Pops, but I would join Ava in saying that, Ava, right? That right now I'm receiving one of the best gifts from Pops, because I'm hearing all of these stories about people's experiences with him, and it just occurred to me, I want to be significant like that. Yeah. You know, it's because it's not the rich or the famous or the Nobel Prize winners that leave a legacy of people wanting him back because of what they've meant to him. To them, you know, and the relationships aren't made and they're not broken. Legacies aren't created and undone by single events, but by a consistency of character. And the man was consistent in his character, and it just gives me hope, you know. And I was just thinking, what one or two habits that could I start today that would make it more likely that I would have this kind of group of people saying these kinds of things about me when I'm gone. So thank you, Pops, for the example.
Well, probably time to close. We could probably go on for a long time, but I think that's good. As Pop would say, that's enough. Yeah, he would about an hour and a half ago. He would have said, "That's enough." That's enough. Yes. So what's going to happen to Pop's little apartment in our house? You know, he had his own bedroom and kitchen, and it was kind of like an efficiency. So we decided that we're going to use it for visiting missionaries. And the New Life missionaries that are coming in November, some of them are going to stay there, and probably maybe another group in January. So I think Pops would really like that, you know. Yeah, so he's going to continue to slip them something, slip those missionaries something, and help them along their way. And that makes me really happy, too, to be able to help missionaries that way. So I thought maybe we could close with a song, an Irish song that most of you know, Old Lang Syne. Yeah, you know that song, Old Lang Syne? It's a Scottish song. It's a Scottish drinking song. That's kind of a redundant phrase actually in Scotland, unfortunately. But yeah, yeah, yeah. It talks about taking a cup of kindness. Well, that's booze. But why don't we stand and we'll sing that, and then with the help of all you strong, healthy young men, we can put this place back together while the ladies maybe clean up the kitchen. I didn't get a chance earlier to thank the worship team, most of whom have gone home and are sound asleep now. But they were up last night till 2 a.m. with David's Tent. Rick Minnick, in addition to doing David's Tent, also had a wedding over the weekend. And so the whole worship team worked very, very hard to be here today. Aaron, his mom, everybody. So I wanted to thank them. I wish they were here earlier. And I want to thank especially Bud and Kay coming all the way from Texas, and Dennis and Barbara coming from way up there in Pennsylvania, and all of you who came locally. Norm, who's came just special for this. Did we ever pray for you for your leaving, like this week? All right. Well, let's just extend our hands towards Norm for a moment. We never did pray for. I don't think we ever did. Lord, we just bless Norm, a faithful man, a good soldier. Well, not a soldier, a good Navy man, sailor for Jesus. And we bless his marriage, his new family life out there, that beautiful home on the river. We just bless them, Father, as they move and live in West Virginia. And thank you for his faithful and kind service here with the Jeep Club and with the church. Well, we just bless them, Father, in Jesus' name. All right. So let's sing Old Lang Syne. It's a traditional song of people saying goodbye. And for us who know the Lord, it's really just Until We Meet Again, which is another old song, Until We Meet Again. But we'll do Old Lang Syne. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind, should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne. Nobody knows what that means. For old lang syne, my friend, for old lang syne. We'll take a cup of kindness, we'll take a cup of kindness then for the days of old lang syne. Nobody knows what the words mean, but all right. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you for loving Dad. Thank you for loving us. And God bless you, and safe journeys home. All right.